Hey guys, today I have a true story that might be even stranger than you can imagine. This story was told to me by a relative of mine about his friend, whom we will call by the pseudonym Mr. Chris. His story is so mysterious that he is now undergoing therapy sessions after what he went through. As I prepare this video, I can't stop my heart from beating fast from the awe of the events I am going to tell you. I will tell you the story as if I were Chris to make you feel exactly what I felt. Chris agreed to let me tell his story and left you a short message that we will read at the end of the video. Let's get started now. Hi, I'm Chris. I'm 28 years old and I live in Denmark. This story started 3 years ago, when I was 25 years old and just finishing my university studies. That summer I was unemployed and incredibly bored. My life was the same routine every day. Sleeping, surfing the internet, and nothing else. One day, I was browsing TikTok when I saw a strange video of a group of people entering abandoned houses and filming unusual things happening. Doors opening and closing by themselves, strange sounds appearing out of nowhere, and even ghosts suddenly appearing and disappearing. They were talking about jinn, something I didn't believe in at first. I felt strangely terrified, but curiosity pushed me to watch more. I became addicted to these types of videos. I would spend long hours on TikTok and YouTube, switching from one video to another. The strange and bizarre scenes made me more and more curious, until these videos became part of my day. After about a week, my friends decided to organize a camping trip and asked me to join them. My best friends were Joe, Brian, and my younger brother who was 2 years younger than me. I was excited to escape the boring routine, so I agreed immediately, and we started planning the trip. When the day came, we were all ready. The group consisted of me, my brother, Joe, and Brian. We had a beautiful day in nature, but when night fell, we sat around the fire and, as usual, started telling horror stories. The atmosphere was perfect for these conversations. Brian decided to tell us a story about jinn, which made me feel strange because I remembered all those videos I had watched. While we were immersed in the horror, Joe suggested a bold idea. He said to us, "Why don't we make scary videos and post them on Snapchat?" At first I was hesitant because I felt like something strange might happen. But Joe kept convincing me, nothing will happen. It will all be an act like everyone else does. Nothing is real in this. Brian and my brother agreed immediately, and I eventually caved to the collective pressure, but inside I was still apprehensive. A few days later, Joe called me and told me that he had found the perfect place to shoot the first video. The place was completely deserted and dark, and the atmosphere was perfect for shooting a scary video. We had a complete plan. My brother would move the doors using invisible string. Brian would wear a scary costume to appear as if he were a ghost. And Joe and I would act as if we were terrified by what was happening around us. We successfully shot the video and returned home. 2 days later, Joe called me, and he was very excited. He said, "Chris, the video we shot has gone viral." I was surprised, so I opened my phone to watch the video. But here was the surprise. In the background of the video, there were strange shadows moving, and doors opening and closing on their own without our intervention. This was not part of the acting we had planned. I thought it might have been visual effects or a glitch in the filming, but something inside me didn't feel right. Despite the anxiety that was starting to creep in, we decided to continue filming more videos. We continued for a month and a half. Every time we filmed a new video, stranger and stranger things happened. Strange sounds were heard, shadows appeared and disappeared, and a constant feeling that something or someone was watching us. The fear began to grow, but the fame we gained pushed us to continue and ignore these warnings. Then came the night that changed everything. Joe came up with a new idea. He said he found a location in London to make a video for us that would be a huge success. The location was a mountain known for its dark legends and stories of evil spirits and witches. People say it is full of mysterious creatures, and that whoever enters this mountain cannot come out. My brother strongly rejected the idea, but Joe was insistent. In the end, we all agreed to go. We traveled to London and booked a hotel near the mountain. The mountain was far from the city, and the stories we heard about it made us feel scared even before we arrived. On the appointed day, we met a strange person. He was the one who was going to take us to the mountain. Remember this man well. He looked a bit suspicious and had a strange laugh when he warned us, "Don't touch any paper you find there." We didn't understand what he meant, but we ignored it. We arrived at the mountain in the evening, and everything was dark and scary. The air was heavy, and the atmosphere was tense. We started setting up the tents and equipment, but suddenly, I noticed a piece of paper lying on the ground. It had very strange symbols written on it. Brian, who was always the most daring of us, picked up the paper and began to read it in a low voice. At that moment, strange things started happening. Strange sounds coming from deep in the mountain, and strange signs began to appear on the ground around us. The air suddenly became cold, and the darkness around us seemed heavier than usual. I felt a shiver run through my body, and when I looked towards the forest, I saw a strange shadow moving between the trees. Brian froze, his eyes filled with terror. I asked him, "What's the matter?" But he didn't answer. I looked in the direction he was staring at, and I saw a strange being standing in the shadows. I couldn't see his features clearly, but he was watching us with glowing eyes. At that moment, we burst into a run as if our lives depended on every step we took. An indescribable sense of fear swept through our bodies as we desperately tried to get back on the road we came from. It was completely night, and the shadows around us were like ghosts moving in every direction. The ground itself seemed to have changed, as if the mountain was trying to mislead us, or perhaps it was the curse of the place creeping up on us. We ran through the dense trees, strange sounds following us from every side. The dry leaves made a terrifying sound under our feet, but we were not alone. Something was following us, something we could not see clearly, but it was there. We heard strange breathing behind us, and the echo of footsteps that did not sound like human steps. Just when it seemed that we had lost all hope of finding the right path, a small, abandoned, and decaying house appeared before us. Its walls were covered in moss and cracks, and the windows were broken, as if time had forgotten it long ago. We didn't think twice. We entered it quickly, as if we had found a last refuge from this horror we were living in. When we entered, we quickly closed the door behind us, seeking whatever protection this old place could offer. But as things calmed down a bit and we started to catch our breath, we noticed something horrifying. Brian wasn't with us. "Where's Brian?" My brother cried out in shock as he looked around. It was clear from the expressions on our faces that none of us had noticed the moment Brian had disappeared. One moment he was with us, and the next, he was gone as if he had never been there. He was walking with us, running alongside us. How could he just disappear like that? A sense of intense fear began to creep into our hearts, not just because of his disappearance, but because we felt that something or someone had been watching us the whole time, waiting for the right moment to take Brian away. Thoughts began to race through my head. What happened to Brian? Is he okay? Could he have gotten lost in the mountains? Or had something worse happened to him? We tried to call him, but our phones had no signal, as if the mountain itself was blocking us and preventing us from communicating with the outside world. "We have to get out of here," Joe shouted as he tried to open the door again. But the door, which we had closed so easily minutes before, would no longer open. It was as if a mysterious force was preventing us from leaving this place. At that moment, I noticed my brother looking at the ground next to the window. There were strange markings carved into the ground, shapes and symbols I had never seen before. The drawings looked like they were part of an ancient ritual, as if someone had drawn them to keep something inside this place, or maybe to keep us inside. That paper, my brother said in a trembling voice, recalling the words of the strange man who had led us to the mountain. Didn't he tell us not to carry any paper we found? He was talking about the paper Brian had picked up from the ground before we started running. Did that paper have anything to do with what was happening now? Did it cause all this horror? I felt panic rising inside us. We decided to search every corner of the abandoned house in hopes of finding any clue that would lead us to Brian or help us get out of this nightmare. As we were exploring the rooms, we heard a sound. It was the sound of footsteps, but it wasn't coming from outside, but from inside the house itself. "Who's there?" I shouted as I turned in the direction of the voice. There was a shadow moving at the end of the narrow hallway, a shadow that was unclear in its features but looked like Brian. We ran towards it, but when we reached the place where we saw it, we found nothing but an old, decaying wall. "Brian!" I called out in a trembling voice, but there was no response. Long moments passed that felt like hours as we tried to understand what was happening. We didn't know if Brian was alive or if he was a victim of this cursed place. All we knew was that we were trapped in this house, and with us was something else, something inhuman, something that was manipulating us as it pleased. As we stood in panic, the few lights that came through the broken window went out, and absolute darkness fell. From there, things began to take a turn for the worse than we could have imagined. This was just the beginning. What happened next was beyond anything we had ever seen before. The story doesn't end here, and if you want to know what happened next, don't forget to subscribe and like the video to support me. I put a lot of effort into preparing these stories. See you in the next video.